Welcome to the Irresistible You podcast. This is the place to get a dose of empowerment to create the life you crave and deserve. Here we talk about weight, body image, emotional eating, and other personal development topics. I'm your host, Amy Beltran, the CEO and founder of Irresistible University and IrresistibleIcing.com. Let's get started with today's episode. Welcome to episode number 10 of the Irresistible You podcast. Okay, I'm just going to put this out on the table. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different than some of the other episodes that I have recorded in the past. If you know me, my style is normally I like to tell a story related around the topic of that podcast, whether it's a current story or a past story or what have you. And then I typically will share like tips or ways to overcome that issue or to, just like tips and tricks and things like that. I always like to provide some actionable things with my content and the way that I share my podcast and my blog posts. Well, today I feel like is going to be a little more off the cuff. It's going to be a little more just like, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about this. Let's put it on the table. Because I don't have the answers today. I don't necessarily know the solution. Because it's not that simple. This isn't a simple, do these 5 things and you'll start feeling confident. That's not what this is going to be about today. This is about talking. Like I said, let's just have this conversation. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your feedback. And it's a sensitive topic. It's a emotional topic. And I know that some of the things I say might rub some people the wrong way. And that's okay. What's important here is that we're putting this on the table for discussion. And that mouths have opened, minds have opened, and people are now starting to have these conversations. So what in the world am I talking about? Well, if you've seen the title of the podcast, you probably have somewhat of an idea. What I'm talking about today is kind of around the Me Too movement and the ideas around body image and confidence, the topics that I talk about on my podcast. So right now in the media, I know that this is hot. Everybody's talking about it. Everyone is emotional one way or another. And I listened to the testimony last week with Dr. Ford, and I have to tell you, it was extremely emotional for me. I had a visceral reaction to it. Like, I felt for her. And the other part about it is it all just felt so real, like reliving something from my past. And I know a lot of other women who feel the same way. And I'm not here to talk politics because, in my opinion, the concept and idea of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, sexual misconduct, rape, all of these things that fall under the Me Too movement, I don't give a shit about your politics. Like, that to me is not what this is about. This is about being decent human beings. And it's disgusting to me that there's people that want to put politics before being a decent human being. So we're just going to leave that part alone right now and not go down that road. But what I want to talk about is I was watching this and I was having a lot of reactions, and I've been reading things from some of my friends and things that are in the news and comments from people on social media, which, if you want to go down a big rabbit hole, reading some of those comments, it's absolutely infuriating, some of the things that are being said. And it made me start thinking about, what the hell can I do to help? What can I do to bring more light to the darkness of this topic? I know that I have a platform. I clearly don't have a platform the size of one that Oprah or some big celebrity has, or even a bigger podcaster, but I still have a platform, and I have people that are watching and listening, and I use my platform for the core purpose of empowering women to create irresistible lives. And there's a lot of components to an irresistible life. And this certainly fits into the realm of what I talk about. And I just was really like thinking it through. So if my thoughts today are kind of scattered and aren't really like in flow, I want you to know that this is why, because I'm kind of just talking off the cuff a little bit and getting some of this stuff out of my head. And like I said, these might just be thoughts to like provoke you to think about things a little bit more, or just ideas that I have in my head, and I want to just lay it out on the table. So let's just try to be open-minded and know that I don't have the answer. You probably don't have the answer. And I don't think many people do right now, because it's not a clear-cut, one-size-fits-all answer to this problem. It's an epidemic. Let's call it an epidemic. And as I was thinking about it, I was kind of going back into my life and thinking through my relationship with my body and where that's come from over the years. And, when I was younger, for those that don't know and are kind of new to my podcast and my blog, I was a chubby kid. And because of my weight, I was bullied. I was bullied through elementary school and mostly elementary and middle school. And when I was bullied growing up, it was always by boys. I really was trying to think about this. Like, I really can't put my finger on this happening by other girls. Other girls can be catty and purposely leave you out, and that kind of stuff happens. But when I was thinking about the actual bullying, the name calling, the singling me out because of my body size, that was always from other boys. And it made me start thinking, like, why was my body so freaking important to you that you felt the need to call me out and to make my body the center of your conversations, to make yourself look better, to make yourself look cool in front of your other friends because you're picking on the shy little chubby girl? Why is that? And it made me really start thinking, like, why did I bother them so much? Why? So from a very young age, my body has been the center of conversation, right? And a lot of my body image issues came from being bullied and being put in this, like, being singled out in front of all these people all the time. And it made me feel like all the attention was on me and I didn't like it. At the same time, I felt so invisible because of it, if that makes sense. And there were times where I was absolutely invisible and ignored, and I know it was because of my body. So I developed a relationship with my body that wasn't good. I hated it. I hated that I had a fat roll. I hated that I was bigger than everyone else in my class. I hated that, I just hated it. I grew to hate my body, and I didn't respect it, and I hated it for everything it stood for, because I never felt good enough. I didn't feel worthy enough. And as I started thinking about Me Too, and I have a lot of stories I could share on that too, and some of them I might share today, and some of them I don't feel that I want to share those right now. So, as I started thinking about Me Too and my body image relationship as a child, it's so closely connected because the way that I saw my body was because of other boys and how they treated me. And that I made that connection that I'm not good enough, my body's disgusting because none of the boys like me in that way. And, and a lot of this happened on my school bus. So then at the same time, I just remember so many conversations on the bus because I could hear everything that were always about girls. And did you see the tits on that one? Did you see the ass on her? And they were talking about celebrities and people on TV and all these comments. And I always felt like so inadequate because no one was talking about me in that way. So it made me feel worthless. And the whole problem, I mean, there's a lot of problems with this whole thing. And it's not my problem, it's their problem that this is how they treat women and treat girls. Right? But the whole thing within all of this is my body image was coming from the way men, or little boys at the time, the way little boys give me or don't give me attention. And that is not okay. And I think this happens to a lot of us as women. It's somewhere along the line, something happens to us, or we have these types of experiences, and we connect our body image with how men treat us, right? And so this sticks with us for our entire life. And I have to say, up until recently, I think with Me Too coming into the light and out of the darkness, I really think a lot of this we have done without realizing we're doing it. And I know that I'm guilty of that as well. So what I mean by that is this culture that we live in, where men are perceived as dominant and better and stronger and all those kinds of things, and women are seen as weak and, stay quiet, don't use your voice, all that kind of stuff. Like, because we've all lived in that culture, it's just been the way it is. And a lot of people haven't questioned that before. So when Me Too started coming out, I think a lot of people, so let me back up a second. When it comes to sexual assault and trauma, a lot of people think that it's not sexual assault and it's not traumatic unless you were raped. People don't take into consideration all the other ways that you can be sexually assaulted and just sexually harassed. And I don't mean just, and I'm not belittling that at all. But what I mean is people don't think about all the other things. And even as girls turning into women, we just accepted this is just how guys are. Boys will be boys. Oh, those guys are so annoying. This is how they are. And, it's so irritating. We got to hear these kinds of comments and blah, blah, blah. And I really want to say until now, I don't think people have, and I know some have, but I'm just saying as a society, as a whole, I don't think people have really questioned that. And I know for me, I didn't. So going back to my story, like with elementary and middle school and being bullied because of my weight and everything like that, I, as I got older and I got into high school and I'm now turning into a woman and I look very much like a woman. I was very curvy. I had big boobs, big hips, small waist, and I had a little bit of extra weight. Okay. I thought I was huge. I thought I was a whale. And I've shared this with you guys before. Like, I look back and I'm like, damn. I'm like, I wish I looked like that now. And as I started driving and working and kind of getting out of my little school bubble that I had been in my whole life, I started getting more attention from men. And I started getting comments and I started getting, hit on and stares and things like that. And this went from the very opposite of what I was used to in elementary and middle school, because now I'm getting attention. And I know, so this is like being really vulnerable right now. And I know a lot of my stuff is vulnerable, but this is something I really don't talk about. But time's up, right? We got to talk about this stuff. Enough is enough. At that time, I considered that positive attention because my body was being looked at and talked about in the way that I was jealous of back in the day on the school bus. When they would talk about, damn, that girl on TV, and I can't remember who was the hot thing at the time that everybody was talking about, but um, to me, at that point, because of my like shattered body image, this was positive attention. But I would play it off like, oh, these guys are gross. Like, this guy keeps trying to hit on me. Ew. And it was gross. But there's also this part of you that kind of enjoys it and is getting validation from the fact that your body is not being told it's disgusting, but it's being looked at in a sexual, desirable way. So that's really conflicting stuff. And, I'm 16, 17 years old, you guys, and I would get hit on and harassed by grown ass men. And I mean, I don't have time to share all these stories today, but I mean, I can just tell you, like, even working my first job at 16, I had a manager who had to be in his 40s who was constantly talking about my ass, my boobs, how hot I was, how he would date me, saying really disgusting things. And I would just kind of laugh it off because everybody's like, yeah, he's a pervert. Everybody knows that. And, everybody just laughed these things off. And I think what really got me so angry this past week when I was watching some of the testimony, and I was tearing up and I was just finding myself really rageful and angry. And I think what was coming up for me was like, we have to stop fucking accepting this shit. Like, that was the problem, is I would just laugh it off. And now as a 37-year-old woman, I look back at my 17-year-old self and I was like, I knew it was wrong, but I also found it validating. So that's like I said before, that's just like a really conflicting message to have bouncing around in your like undeveloped brain, right? And that followed me even into my 20s. Like, I used to go clubbing, oh my God, I don't even know how many times a week, at least twice, at least 2 to 3 times a week. And going clubbing and getting dressed up and, putting on all the, the nighttime makeup and heels and stuff like that. If I were to go out one night and did not get stared at, hit on, some kind of comment, someone trying to buy me drinks or what have you, I felt worthless. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard. And I felt like, wow, I must just be a fat, obese whale. And I kind of go back and thinking of that little 10-year-old girl who actually thinks that's what she is, right? And so I'm saying all of this stuff right now because the way that we view our body and our confidence or lack of confidence and self-esteem and the Me Too movement is so closely connected, because we as women, I think subconsciously by society, whatever, we've been taught that we're here to be these sexual objects for the opposite sex. And that we should be thankful and happy to be, catcalled and whistled at and hit on, because it means we're sexy and we're beautiful. And, if we weren't, then we wouldn't be getting that attention. And I know for me, that was definitely like solidified for the fact that I didn't get that attention early on. And the attention that I got was was negative, right? So I don't know where all this is going. I just know that I have to talk about it. I know that I have to put this on the table. And like I said, I don't have the answers to any of this. And none of what I'm saying is telling girls and women that it's our fault. It's exactly the opposite. But what I'm saying is, as a society, we have contributed to this epidemic because as girls, we've been conditioned to believe that we are not equal, that we are not capable of standing up for ourselves, that it's okay. Like, we need to be beautiful and sexy for men, and that is not true. So that's kind of another point that I wanted to talk about is, how many times have you left the house and not gotten dressed up and not put on high heels because you knew you just didn't want to deal with it today? You know what I'm talking about. You didn't want to deal with the attention. I've done it. I've done it to where I just don't want to wear certain things, or, I want to keep my jacket on when I run into the store because I know I'm going to get stares. I know I'm going to get probably, hit on. And now that I'm older and I have, my confidence is good and I'm in a really great place that way, I don't want that attention. I find it super irritating. I find it insulting a lot of the time. So I didn't have that same view, years ago. So it just made me think, like, I asked my husband, I was like, do you ever, like, get ready to leave the house and then question what you're wearing because you just don't want to be, like, sexually harassed? And he's like, I have no idea what that feels like. And I think that's the thing, right? Like, men, they just don't get it because they've never had to deal with this. And as women, we think about, all right, do I really want to wear this when I leave the house today? Or, it's already late. I don't think I'm going to run to the store tonight. I'm going to get up early in the morning because I don't want to be out at night by myself. And let me say something else. None of that is saying, what you wear and when you go out means you deserve to be sexually assaulted, harassed, or raped. No. Hell to the no. No one deserves that. But what I'm saying is, the society that we are in, it has almost been like we subconsciously think this way. Like, just because of the way it's been. And I think things are starting to come to the surface, are going to start changing, and the younger girls are going to recognize this so much earlier than all of us did. And we're going to start changing things and telling people, enough is enough, and we're not going to take this, and this isn't how it's going to be. And things are starting to happen. But for so long, that's just the way it's been. And I don't even know as women if we've thought about that. Like, and I think that's what happened for me is, like, when I really sat down and thought about it, I was like, holy shit. Like, as a female, you do think about these things, but you don't really put two and two together until, I think for me, even until like the last year or so, and especially the last couple months of like, wow, like, it doesn't have to be this way. And it's just crazy. So, like I said, I know this is all over the place, and I love to have answers, and I love to have tips and help to give you. And I don't right now. I just have to get this off my chest. And one of the other points that I wanted to bring up is also the fact that, going back to what we wear, when I've had so many girls or women say to me, "Oh my God, why are you so dressed up?" And that irritates me so much, because it's like, first of all, why does that matter? And second of all, I'm not like, are they like, oh, who are you trying to impress? Like, if I show up like, dressed to the nines and full cake face, full hair, the whole nine, bitch, I'm not trying to impress nobody. I'm trying to impress myself. And I can tell you that with all honesty. Like, I don't dress for men. I don't get my makeup done. I don't get my eyebrows done. And I don't get my crystal nails and everything else done for men. I do it for myself. And I find that it's just bullshit that if we want to dress sexy and feel feminine and sexy and everything else, that means we're doing it for someone else, that means we're doing it for men. And I also can't stand the fact that when we do dress that way, we know that we're going to get attention that we may not want. And that's bullshit. But then it brings up this other point, and again, I'm just kind of all over the place here, is there's nothing wrong with wanting with wanting good attention from the opposite sex. There is nothing wrong with that at all. And there's also nothing wrong with wanting to feel ultra feminine and ultra sexy and wearing clothes that make you feel that way. There is nothing wrong with that. And I would say there's everything right with that, because that is like the ultimate, like, feeling and looking irresistible. And I love that. So it's so conflicting and confusing of like how we teach girls the difference, right? And that's something I'm kind of, I guess, struggling with a little bit as Catalina is going to get older, and I want to be able to teach her that, your body is not here to be the object of conversation or an object, period, for anyone, male or female. And that you're allowed to dress and look and feel and talk however you want to. And that none of those things that you do invites anyone to cross the line for you. And then on the other side of that, like, how do we teach boys, and I guess girls too, like, how do we teach the difference between flirting and harassment? And I think for some young boys and even men, that might be really confusing for them, to know that, like, if I hit on a female and I show interest in her, is she going to think that's harassing? Because I think there's some blurred lines on both sides. I think we have to recognize that. And it's just a really confusing thing. So it's getting into the light more and more. And I think my generation, as well as especially the younger people right now, are really going to bring this to the forefront and are going to be able to make some changes. And someone I saw something the other day too. Again, I'm rambling a little bit. About like 80s movies, and it was specifically about 16 Candles and how like date rape culture was like a big part of 80s movies. And you know what? I guess I didn't really think about that until I read this article where, the girl's drinking and passing out, and so I think it was in 16 Candles where he's like, "Have fun, here you go," and gave his girlfriend over to the nerd. I can't remember his name. He's in like all the 80s movies, the main character. And I was like, holy shit, yeah, that's so true. And so that's why I always say, like, one of the things we talk about in the Irresistible You framework, in the course, and the way that I coach, and the way that I teach, one of my guiding principles is called break the rules. And we talk about how some of these rules are just embedded into our culture, from movies, from, media, from family, from friends, things that we've heard and seen over the years. And I think that a lot of the things that have happened as it relates to like sexual harassment and sexual assault, a lot of those things we've just accepted. That's just the way it is. But now it's time to break the rules, and it's time to call it out and tell people it's not okay, right? And to also understand that just that rape is not the only way you can violate someone. It's the worst. It's horrific. It's the, one of the most violent ways to ever violate someone. But there's other ways that someone can feel violated that we may not recognize as quote unquote traumatic. Does that make sense? Because I think I've seen that a lot in comments where people were like, well, he didn't rape her, so what the hell is she talking about? And it's like, are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me right now? This came up in one of my good friends, Stephanie, who's an anxiety expert, and we were doing a training together recently, and we were talking about trauma and how there is big T trauma and there's little t trauma. And when I first started going to therapy many years ago, I remember I had to fill out this form that said, please write down all the ways that you've been, all the traumas you've experienced in your life. And, I didn't know what to put, because I thought, well, I've never actually been raped. I've never witnessed a murder. I thought of like all the, I haven't been to war. I thought about all these like horrible, abusive, violent ways that people are traumatized. And that was part of my problem, is that I didn't recognize other things that have a little t are also traumas, and one after the other after the other after the other stacks up, and these are the things that hold us back. These are the things that prevent us from living the irresistible lives that we crave. And we live in a society that doesn't recognize that those things are actually traumatic as well. um, being bullied and made fun of over and over and over and over again because of your weight, that is traumatic. And that creates those unwritten rules in your brain that you're now living your life by. You know, there's a number of different things, right? That can be that. Having men sexually harass you, grope you, say nasty things. Those are traumatic things. And we have to recognize that. And I'm not happy that this stuff is out there, but I'm happy that it's coming to light. And I'm happy that people are going to start being more educated that, yeah, this stuff matters too. And I think for women, what I'm trying to say is, I want to say all of us have experienced something that's related to the Me Too movement. And we maybe didn't think that we had until we start hearing the stories. It's like, well, yeah, I used to get harassed all the time by my boss, like every single day that I went to work, and I just brushed it off because, he's the boss and I don't want to say anything. I was young, and, we brush all these things off. And I think that's what's really going to start shifting. At least I hope it is. And I hope that by talking about this stuff and sharing these stories, that it's totally going to shift, because it's not okay. So I know that's all over the place. I know that. And I just felt like I had to get all this out of my head, because I wasn't quite sure how to write it. I wasn't quite sure how to say it. So I just had to get on here and say it. And so I'm hoping it makes sense, and I hope that it's not offensive to anyone, because I am, I'm a big cheerleader for empowering women and giving us a voice, and we have to give ourselves a voice, because that's one of the other things too, is with the Me Too movement coming into light, a lot of women are now finding their voice. And I can tell you, having a platform where you can be heard and people are listening, it is so empowering to have that, because I know for a lot of my life, I haven't felt heard. I really haven't. And telling these stories, while it might feel, and it does feel super vulnerable, and it feels scary, and it feels like people are going to judge you, and it feels shameful, I don't want you to feel that way. I want you to do it anyway. I want you to tell your stories anyway. Because men and women need to hear these stories. Because both sides, men and women, are uneducated on this stuff. And I am just blown away at the lack of support from some women when it comes to the Me Too movement and sexual assault and sexual harassment, and the excuses that are being made for their perpetrators. It just blows my mind, you guys. I cannot understand it, but that's why we have to keep talking about it, because I think a lot of people, they just don't get it. And again, this isn't about political, this isn't about sides, this is just about, be a good human being. Keep your hands to yourself. I know I checked this off as explicit. Keep your dick in your pants. Keep your hands to yourself. Like, what is the problem? Why is that so fucking hard for men to do? Why? Why? I just don't get it. I really don't. I just don't get it. It's so crazy. But we're putting this shit out in the light now. And what is brought into light can't survive. And we're going to make sure that people have heard stories. We're going to make sure that you have a voice. And that's going to give you back your confidence. That's going to give you back your self-esteem that has been stolen away from you. And if you're someone who has gone through sexual harassment, sexual assault, I want to say I'm sorry. I want to say that that should have never, ever happened to you. And I am so sorry that that was stolen away from you. And I am here for you. I am here to listen. I am here to be a voice for all of us to say enough is enough. And I want to be able to use my platform to give a voice to all of this that's going on. Because you deserve to feel irresistible, and you deserve to live an irresistible life. And no one should be able to take that away from you. And if someone has taken that away from you, I want you to find the strength to take your power back, to be in control, to have a voice, to create and live that irresistible life that you crave and you feel like you haven't been able to do it, and you know that you deserve to do it. I want that for you. And yeah, you guys, this is complicated stuff. This isn't something that, like I said before, this isn't something that's going to have an easy answer. This isn't there's just not a clear-cut black and white answer to this. And some last closing remarks to kind of wrap this up a little bit is that body image and feeling good and confident about your body is not about anyone else. It's not about pleasing men. It's not about pleasing other women. It's about feeling happy and content and comfortable in your own skin. And body image does not equate to feeling sexy or not. And I think that's something too, because the word body, how do you feel when you hear the word body? I think the word body has been sexualized, honestly. And so when we hear body image, sometimes we think, well, I got to look and feel good about myself so that I can, find a husband or find a man or, get attention in that way. No. When your body image is healthy and positive, you won't want or need that validation from anyone else, male or female. So let's just recap that body image, it's not about anyone else. It's about looking and feeling good for yourself. Because when you're able to feel good about yourself and like what you see and respect and love your body, you're going to have higher confidence. And that confidence is going to let you use your voice to speak out and to speak out to other people when they violate you. Because when we don't feel good about ourselves, back to the story I shared earlier, we look for that validation in other people. So something that someone says that we know is probably inappropriate, we might just accept it and think of it as a compliment because we're seeing that as positive attention. I hope that makes sense. I hope that doesn't come out the wrong way. But let's talk about it. I totally want to talk about this stuff. And another point is have we as women stayed silent for so long because we think that our bodies are just here for the enjoyment of men? Is that why we've been silent about all the harassment and the assault and the groping and everything else? Have we stayed silent because we think or we thought that and have been taught that that's what we're here for? We're here to stay silent and sweet and meek and mild and, boys will be boys. And, it was like the one lunatic on the news who said, well, what do you expect? Teenage boys are their hormones are raging. As if that's an excuse? That's bullshit. So these are just things to think about, right? Have we stayed silent for so long because we think that our bodies are here for the enjoyment of men? because that's what we've been taught. Those are the rules that were embedded into our brains in all these years. And I think there's some truth to that, because I read an article that said how millennial women, and I'm like right on the end, I'm a very old millennial, you guys, how millennial women are looking at look at sexual harassment completely different from baby boomers because of the society we've all grown up in. Think about that. So what we put up with is completely different than what other generations are putting up with. And that's true for all women's rights, you know? And another, just we're talking about some points to ponder here, just kind of wrapping up everything I've said. Have we also kept our stories private in the dark because we thought we should be thankful for that attention, especially when we don't feel that we have the ideal body type? Think about that. Have we kept our stories private and not come forward because we think that because we don't have a high body image and a high confidence of ourselves, that we should just be thankful we got that attention? Because, I mean, yeah, and I'm not saying, and these things that I'm bringing up are not because I agree with them. I'm saying them because I think this is what society has like molded for us. And there was actually a court case happened in Canada where a woman was sexually assaulted in a taxi, and the judge actually I cannot even believe this is real life. The judge made some type of comment about, well, look at her, she's overweight. I mean, she has a pretty face, so something about like she should be thankful because she probably never got that attention before. I think they're like, that's just sick. Like, that's just sick that a judge, someone in a position of power, would make that kind of a comment. And it's happening. These comments are happening, and we have to change it. Another thought to ponder is, if we had better body image and confidence and self-esteem, would the Me Too movement be as large as it is right now? Because what I mean by that is, if we thought highly of ourselves, if we weren't looking for that validation in men, if we weren't lacking the self-esteem in ourselves and our bodies, would we have accepted as much harassment as we've accepted? And I've asked myself the same thing. And none of this is pointing fingers. Let me just make that very clear. This is not about, I swear to you, I'm not pointing blame on women at all. I'm in the same boat here. But what I'm saying is, for me being younger, if I had the mentality and the confidence that I have now at 37, would I have maybe told someone or addressed some of the harassment that went on? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Hindsight's 2020, right? I don't know. I'm just bringing this up on the table that if we instilled higher confidence, higher body image into our girls, will the Me Too movement be as large as it is now going forward? Let's think about that a little bit. And that leads me to the next point. It's kind of the same thing of like, if we instilled that into our daughters, our little girls, that they're worth more than just being a hot body and a pretty face, would the Me Too movement be this insidious? If little girls from a young age can stand up for themselves and have that confidence to tell someone because they can trust people to tell, because that's another problem. If they know that they can bring this issue to light and they can feel that they're going to be heard and seen and they can trust, how will this movement look 30 years from now? And if we did the same for boys and taught them that women were equal and they're not sexual objects just here for their pleasure, what would the movement look like? And if we taught those people that are grown adults saying that, well, nothing happened because it wasn't rape, what would this look like? Because it doesn't matter whether it's rape, sexual harassment, sexual assault, it's all in the same bucket. And then how do we teach and understand how to draw the line between wanting to be feminine and sexy and then getting that unwanted attention? I know we talked about this a little bit, but how do we teach young people and how do we reteach older people that women are allowed to wear dresses and we're allowed to look and feel sexy, and just because we do that doesn't mean we need you to hit on us, because we don't. And then how do you, as a female, how do you navigate that, not wanting to be a prude, but also not wanting the unwanted attention? And I get it, you guys. I completely get that it should be a very clear line in the sand, and this is this and this is that, but it's not. And I'm recognizing as a mom with a girl, as I'm thinking about these things more than I ever have in my entire life, how do I teach her this stuff? How do I teach her that it's okay? How do I teach her that you can be flirtatious, but you also need to know when to draw the line and say no? It should seem like it's black and white, but it's not. That's the problem. And, lastly, as we're wrapping up here, we can be feminine, we can be sexy, we can be tomboys. I don't even know if is that even politically correct thing to say anymore. We can be whatever we want and still be feminine and still be strong and still, be in positions of power and still be confident and still have a voice, and a voice that's not going to be silenced. So I know this was a lot. I know this is probably probably the longest podcast I've ever recorded, and a part of me doesn't feel like I've been helpful because I haven't given you concrete tips and tricks and advice. It's just kind of been me talking off the cuff. But I wanted to open the door to this conversation because it is so important. It is so important for us to keep talking about it and not let the haters drown us out by saying nasty things. And that's coming from both political sides. That's coming from both men and women. And I'm here for human beings. I'm here to empower you. I'm here to help you find the strength within you, to find your confidence, to love your body, and to create and live the life you love and crave and make it irresistible. And you can be irresistible, and you can be that just for yourself. You don't need to do it to impress anyone else. You don't need to do it to gather and gain anyone else's attention. And again, I'm here with you. I'm sorry for anyone that has gone through these things. It's extremely difficult. It's extremely hard. And it's time, though, to find your voice again. Or maybe you're finding it for the very first time. And to that, I want to say to you, me too. I want to say time's up. And thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for engaging and joining the conversation. Please hit me up over on Instagram. You can leave a comment on any of my posts with your thoughts. You can also talk about this with me inside of my free private Facebook group, Irresistible You. All you have to do is request to join, and I will let you into the group. Or you can comment on the blog post that will be attached to this episode. And I would love to have a conversation with you. Let's see where this goes. Let's see what other episodes we might want to do after this as a follow-up that maybe are a little more concrete. And again, thank you so much for listening. If this resonates with you and if you're connecting to the Irresistible You podcast, could you do me a huge favor? Could you please, it only takes a couple minutes. If you're using Apple, can you leave me a rating and review on iTunes? It's really simple to do. It helps me tremendously. It helps other women to find the podcast, and it gives us all a collective voice to share our stories and to get this message out there. So I would love you long time if you could do that. And also make sure to post your pictures on Instagram and hashtag them irresistibleyou to show me how you're living your irresistible life. I want to connect with you and see what you're out here doing. So, excuse me. On that note, thank you again for listening. I will catch you on the next episode. In the meantime, stay irresistible.